If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to. I'm not the type to make things up. I've lived long enough to know the difference between imagination and something that leaves a mark on your memory so deep it follows you no matter how many years go by. And this is one of those things. Ask anyone in my family who was there that night. They'll tell you the same. Maybe with different words. Maybe with a nervous laugh to brush it off. But none of us really laugh about it anymore. Not since that night at my grandmother's house. It was a Saturday. One of those calm evenings when everyone decided to visit my grandma out in the countryside. Her house sat at the edge of a small town, isolated enough that when night fell, the silence outside became almost heavy. There were no passing cars, no barking dogs, no lights from neighboring houses, just open land and the soft sounds of nature around us. That night, we were all gathered outside in her backyard. There must have been 10, maybe 12 of us, sitting around this massive old wooden table under a string of yellow patio lights. The table had been there since I was a kid, probably even before I was born. It creaked when you leaned on it, and one leg was shorter than the others, so it wobbled slightly if you bumped it wrong. But it was ours. That table had seen everything from birthday cakes to political arguments. We ate, we talked, we laughed. The kind of night that makes you feel safe, comfortable, like the world beyond those trees couldn't touch us. But looking back, I wonder if that sense of comfort is what let our guard down. Because the moment we started talking about things we shouldn't have, the air changed. My grandmother always had a thing for the unexplained. Ghost stories, folk tales, strange superstitions. She didn't just believe them. She respected them. And whenever we'd gather like this, she'd eventually slip into one of her stories. This night was no different. Someone, I don't even remember who, asked her about the old house she lived in before this one, the one closer to the woods. That was all it took. Her eyes lit up like she'd been waiting for an excuse. She set down her glass, leaned forward with that familiar look in her eye, and started to talk. Her voice dropped slightly, just enough to make you lean in without realizing. She told us about the time she heard footsteps on the roof, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth while she was alone in bed. Another time, she said she found deep claw marks on the inside of her kitchen door. Not scratches, claw marks, as if whatever made them was trying to get out, not in. We'd all heard her stories before, but something about that night made us listen harder. Maybe it was the way the wind stopped completely when she started talking. Maybe it was how the cicadas, which had been buzzing nonstop, suddenly went quiet. I remember looking around the table. No one was scrolling on their phones. No one was interrupting. We were all locked in, like kids around a campfire, waiting for the moment when the monster shows up. She was in the middle of another story, something about a woman with no eyes who used to stand at the edge of the garden when it happened. It was a sound I'll never forget. A single, violent slap, like a heavy hand crashing down with full force, smack in the middle of the table. Everyone jumped. I felt the table jolt beneath my arms. The glasses rattled. My cousin dropped a spoon, and it clattered loudly onto the concrete patio. For a second, I thought someone had slammed their hand down as a joke, maybe to scare us or mess with the mood. But when I looked around, no one was moving. Every pair of eyes was wide, scanning the table, then the space around it. Some of us stood up. Others just froze in place, like we were all waiting for someone to laugh and say, "Got you." But no one did. There was no explanation, No bird flying overhead. No branch falling from a tree. Nothing. Just the sound, the force, and the silence that followed, stretching way too long. I looked at my grandmother. She hadn't flinched, but her face had gone pale. Her hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. I opened my mouth to say something, but I couldn't find the words. That slap didn't sound natural. It didn't sound like anything I could rationalize. It was too loud, too precise. And the strangest part was that none of us saw it. Nothing. It was like it came from the air itself, from something invisible standing between us. Then we ran. Not all at once. Not like in the movies. It was messier than that. My younger cousin was the first to bolt. He didn't say a word, just shoved his chair back and sprinted toward the house. Someone else screamed. I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over my chair. My uncle yelled something, but his voice was drowned out by the sheer panic that took over. We didn't wait to see if there'd be another sound, or if something was there. We just ran. The house felt like a sanctuary. Light spilled through the windows. Familiar smells clung to the kitchen. But none of us felt safe, not really. Not after what we'd just experienced. Everyone talked over each other. My aunt kept saying, "What was that? What was that?" My brother swore he saw something move, just past the tree line. I didn't believe him, but I also couldn't prove he was wrong. I remember standing by the back door, peeking through the glass at the table. It was still there, same as always, but it looked different, like something had passed through it, or claimed it. I don't know. I just know I didn't want to be near it again. Eventually, the noise died down. People left earlier than usual. No one wanted to stay until morning. After that night, everything changed. We kept visiting my grandma, of course, but no one ever sat at that table past sundown again. Not once. The backyard gatherings stopped. Dinners moved indoors. And anytime someone brought up what happened, the room would go quiet. We all remembered the sound, the weight of it, the unnatural sharpness, like it had cut through more than just the night, like it had cut through something we weren't meant to open. Sometimes I try to reason it away. Maybe it was just a weird coincidence, an animal, a falling object we didn't see. But that explanation never really lands. Not with how clearly we all heard it. Not with how deeply it shook us. And the fact that no one saw anything, not a shadow, not a blur, not even a movement of air. That's what stays with me. Something was there. We all felt it. We all heard it. But none of us could see it. Even now, years later, when I visit my grandma and look at that table, I get the same feeling, like something's still around, watching, waiting. We never talked about it again in full. Not really. But I know, deep down, none of us ever forgot. And no matter how much time passes, I don't think we ever will. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to Beyond. It was just another afternoon. Quiet, warm, and honestly, kind of perfect for a nap. My mom had taken my little brother out to run errands. I don't remember exactly where they went, but I remember she told me they'd be gone for a couple of hours. I was maybe 16 or 17 at the time, old enough to stay home alone without thinking twice about it. We lived in a small, two-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where everyone keeps their doors locked even during the day. Not because it was dangerous, just because that's how things were. Habit, routine. You lock the doors, shut the windows, and don't expect anything unusual. I made sure everything was locked before I went to lie down. I wasn't tired exactly, just lazy, I guess. You know, when the house is so quiet it almost rocks you to sleep? That's how it felt. I laid down on my bed, face turned toward the wall, lying on my stomach with my arms close to my sides. The bed was pushed right up against the wall, so my nose was practically inches from the cold plaster. I wasn't expecting to fall asleep, but I did, and it wasn't even a deep sleep. It was one of those half-aware, drifting naps where your body feels heavy, but your brain's still listening for things. Like part of me knew the house was too quiet, too still, but I didn't think much of it then. Now, looking back, I realized that silence wasn't calm. It was pressure. Our house, well, it had its stories. My mom never liked to talk about them, but there were things, small things, the kind of stories you brush off when you're telling them out loud, but they sit in the back of your mind, waiting for the quiet to creep in again. I remember when we had a dog, years before this. He'd bark at corners, growl at empty rooms. Once, he refused to walk past the hallway to the laundry room, just sat there whining with his ears back. We laughed it off at the time, said he was scared of shadows. But shadows don't make floorboards creak in the middle of the night. Shadows don't whisper your name when no one else is awake. There were lights that flickered, doors that never stayed quite closed. My mom blamed faulty wiring and old hinges, but there's only so many excuses you can make before the logic stops making sense. Still, I'd never felt unsafe. Uneasy maybe, but not afraid. Not until that day. I don't know what woke me up. It wasn't a loud noise or anything crashing. If it had been, I probably would have jumped out of bed. It was subtle, a presence, a feeling that my body caught before my mind did. And then I felt it. A hand, a real warm, solid hand. It slid down the back of my upper arm, from my shoulder to my elbow. Smooth, slow, deliberate. Not a breeze, not a muscle spasm, not a dream. A hand. And here's the part one can't shake. It came from behind me, from the side of the bed that faced the room. But my head was turned toward the wall, which means whatever touched me was on the side I couldn't see. I opened my eyes immediately, and I froze. I didn't roll over. I didn't sit up. I just stared at the wall, every inch of me tense, waiting to hear something. Footsteps, a breath, anything. But there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just the kind of stillness that makes your skin crawl. I couldn't move. My heart was racing, and my body felt like it was stuck between fight and flight. I tried to convince myself that maybe, somehow, I imagined it, but I knew I didn't. I felt it. I felt fingers, the weight of a palm, the warmth of it dragging down my arm. It wasn't sleep paralysis. I could move. I just didn't, because I didn't want to see what was behind me. I stayed like that for what felt like forever. Eventually, I think my brain just shut down. I don't remember falling back asleep, but I must have. Fear can do that sometimes. It wears you out in a strange way, like your body gives up before your mind does. When I woke up again, I heard the sound of the front door opening, my mom's voice, my brother laughing. The house was alive again. I sat up slowly, still shaken. I looked around the room. Nothing was out of place. The door was still closed. No signs of anything being moved. Nothing strange. But I knew. I didn't say anything. What was I supposed to say? That I felt a hand on me while I was sleeping, even though no one else was in the house? They would have said I was dreaming, that it was a trick of the mind, maybe even a leftover sensation from the position I was lying in. But it wasn't that. Something touched me, and it wasn't human. After that day, things didn't exactly go back to normal. Not for me. I didn't nap the same way again. I stopped lying on my stomach. I never turned my face toward the wall anymore. I always wanted to see the room, to keep my eyes on the door, just in case. Sometimes I'd lie in bed and listen, really listen, to the house. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock in the hallway, the wind outside. But once in a while, I'd hear something else. A shift, a creak that didn't belong, a soft knock from somewhere deep inside the walls. I started sleeping with the hallway light on. During the day, everything felt normal. But when the sun went down and the house settled into that heavy silence again, I'd remember the hand, that touch, how sure it was, how present. I've never experienced anything like it since, but that doesn't mean I stopped feeling it. I carry it with me, like a scar you can't see. There's something profoundly unsettling about being touched by something that shouldn't exist. It breaks a rule inside your head, a rule you didn't even know was there until it was violated. The worst part, I never saw it. I don't know what it was. I didn't turn my head. I didn't face it. And maybe that's the only reason I'm okay. Maybe that's why it didn't stay. But I still wonder, what would have happened if I had turned around? If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to be. I don't know how it started, or if it even started at all. It's just something that's always been there in my family. A strange, unsettling connection that no one really talks about, but it's always there, lurking in the background. Ghosts, or whatever you want to call them. Spirits, shadows, or maybe just figments of our overactive imaginations. It's a pattern, though, one that's repeated itself across generations. My mom once told me that my grandmother saw a man in a black coat standing at the foot of her bed when she was young. She couldn't remember his face, but she remembers his coat, his tall frame, and how he just stood there, as if waiting. My aunt has had similar experiences. She always described seeing someone standing in the hallway of her old house. Again, no face, just a vague figure with clothes she could describe in detail, but no face. It's the same for my cousin. He swears he saw a woman in a red dress walking along the road near their house. He never mentioned her face, just the dress, the way it swayed in the wind, and how she disappeared the moment he blinked. For me, it started when I was 17. Nothing special, nothing that would have made me think twice about it. Just one of those things you shrug off at first. But that was before I saw her. It was a quiet night, one of those summer nights where the heat doesn't quite go away, no matter how late it gets. I had just left my friend's house and was walking back home. The streets were eerily empty. I'm not sure why, but there's always something unsettling about walking alone in the dark, especially when you know you're the only one out there. I was crossing the avenue near my house when I saw her. At first, I thought she was just a girl waiting for someone. But as I got closer, I realized something wasn't right. She was standing barefoot in the middle of the street, her long, pale blue dress flowing in the breeze, barely moving at all. She didn't seem to notice me. The strangest part was her stillness. She wasn't looking around, wasn't checking her phone. Nothing like you'd expect from someone standing there at that hour. She was just there, standing like a mannequin, staring straight ahead at something I couldn't see. I remember the way her hair, damp from the humidity, clung to her face. but I couldn't make out any features. I tried to ignore the chill creeping up my spine, but as I walked closer, I could feel something pulling at me, something that made my heart beat faster. I looked away for just a second, thinking maybe I was imagining it, and when I looked back, she was gone. Just gone. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't like she'd run off or disappeared in some dramatic way. 1 second she was there, and the next, nothing. Just the empty street. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. But all I could think of was her dress. Her face was a blur, but the dress, the pale blue color, I couldn't forget it. I still can't. Years later, I went to visit my aunt's house in the country. It was a simple place, quiet and far away from the bustle of the city. I thought it would be a nice, peaceful getaway. But there was something off about that house, something in the air. Maybe it was just the isolation, or maybe it was the fact that everything felt too still. One night, my aunt and I were sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, talking about old family stories, when she suddenly froze. I could see her eyes widen, her hand gripping the mug tightly. I followed her gaze to the window, and that's when I saw him. A man, tall, wearing a white shirt, walking across the yard. At first, I thought it was someone who had wandered in, maybe a neighbor or a lost traveler. But there was something wrong. He didn't look natural, didn't seem to fit with the quiet, empty landscape of the yard. I followed his movements as he passed by the window, heading toward the back door. But here's the thing. He didn't walk through the door. He just disappeared. I blinked, looking around, but there was no one in the yard. The house was quiet. My aunt was shaking, and I could tell she had seen it too. We both went outside to check, and of course, no one was there. No footprints in the dirt, no sign of anyone. The door remained shut, locked. It didn't make sense, but it didn't have to. Not when it came to these things. It was the same feeling I had with the girl in the street, an unease that lingered, even after you think you figured it out. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't the only one in the family to experience these strange visions. Everyone had seen something, but no one talked about it openly. It was like this unspoken rule. You don't mention the ghosts, the figures that are there but aren't. I spoke to my cousin, and he told me about a time when he was driving through a small town at night. He saw a woman in a green coat standing by the side of the road. She just stood there, staring at the headlights as he drove by. When he turned around to go back and see if she needed help, she was gone. He didn't remember her face, only the coat, the green coat. Then there's my uncle. He saw a man in his house one night, standing at the foot of his stairs, just watching him. When my uncle called out, the man turned and walked into the shadows. My uncle rushed to check, but by the time he reached the spot, the figure was gone, like they all were. Always the same, always dressed, always something you can remember, but never the face. I started to wonder, are these spirits? Or is it something else? Something more unsettling? Something that doesn't want to be seen clearly? Something that's stuck between this world and whatever comes after? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that these things were real, that they were haunting my family, that they were still there, waiting. But I couldn't deny it anymore. Not after what happened to me. It was late, past midnight. I was lying in bed, the house completely still, when I woke up suddenly. Something wasn't right. The air was thick, oppressive, and I could feel it, the feeling of being watched. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that it was just the darkness playing tricks on my mind. But then I saw him. At the foot of my bed, standing perfectly still, was a figure. A man in a long, dark coat. I couldn't see his face. I never could. The coat was heavy, flowing almost like it had weight, and it seemed to absorb the darkness around it. His presence felt so real, so physical, that I could almost hear his breathing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. It was like I was frozen, trapped in my own body, just staring at this thing, watching me. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he faded into the shadows. Gone. When I finally managed to move, to turn on the light, nothing was there. No trace. But I knew what I had seen. And I knew it wasn't the first time. I don't know why these things happen. Why we can never see their faces, but we can always remember what they wear. But after that night, I started to believe, really believe, that something was out there. Something that didn't want us to know it. Something that only showed us what it wanted us to see. And maybe, just maybe, that's worse than seeing it all. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to Beyond Fear and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Here, you'll find more real stories filled with mystery, psychological horror, and the supernatural every week. Before you go, make sure to check out the 2 videos that just popped up in the end screen. I promise, they'll leave you with goosebumps. See you next time, if you dare.